Underneath this lion statue in Greece, archaeologists found the bones of 254 men, all killed in battle over 2,300 years ago. They say the man that helped destroy them was just 18 years old, fighting his first great battle. His name was Alexander the Great. When archaeologists counted the skeletons, the number was wrong. The bones didn't tell the story everyone had expected. My name's Joe, and this is one Buried Earth video that is well worth your time. Do subscribe if you enjoy. So, this is the Battle of Chaeronea, fought in the year 338 BC, and the day everything started for the most famous conqueror who had ever lived. But the men in that grave weren't his soldiers. They were the enemy, an elite unit that had never lost, making their last stand against an 18-year-old who is about to change the world. They came from Thebes, one of the great cities of Greece, and they were the best the city had. 300 hand-picked soldiers, full-time fighters, paid for and kept by the state. While most Greek armies are just farmers who would pick up a spear when the season demanded it, these men did nothing but train for war. But that's not what made them famous. What made them famous was how they were put together. The ancient writers tell us the sacred band was built out of pairs, 150 couples, lovers fighting side by side. The idea was simple: put a man next to the person he loved the most, the one whose opinion he cares about above everyone else, and he would not run. He would rather die than look like a coward in front of them. For around 40 years, nobody beat the sacred band. This was the part the legend often skips. These men weren't famous just for who they loved. They were famous because they won a lot. They were part of the Theban army that did the unthinkable and crushed Sparta, the most feared fighting force in Greece, the army everyone had believed was unbeatable. So by the time our story begins, these 300 had a reputation built over a lifetime. Undefeated, elite, the unit other soldiers told stories about, and they were about to walk onto a field against an 18-year-old boy having the most important day of his life. Now, before we get any deeper into today's episode, I've got something here that I am genuinely a little bit nervous about, and I haven't even looked at it yet. If you watch this channel, you know I'm obsessed with human history, and here's a little thing about me. I'm English, my mum's English, and my dad is Scottish, and that's all I really know about my family. So I've partnered with MyHeritage today to finally find out. So a massive thank you to MyHeritage for sponsoring today's video, and I'm really glad they are. A few weeks ago, I did the test. It's just a cheek swab, it takes 2 minutes, and then you pop it in the post. The kit itself is just £19, dollars and euros right now, which includes free shipping and a 30-day free trial, cheaper than pretty much every other test like it. Right, so I've been emailed my results, I've got them open here. I'm actually looking forward to clicking on this one. I have no idea what this is going to be, so let's go, okay? Joe, ready to explore your ethnicity. Let's go. Oh, I'm actually buzzing. Joe, you are 38% Scottish and Welsh. I'm expecting that. My dad's Scottish. Whole half of my family is Scottish. 23.7% English. Oh my god, I was expecting a lot more than that, to be honest. I thought at least 50%. 22.6% Irish. I was not thinking I was any Irish. I guess maybe if it was mixed in with Scotland. Breton, that's in France. I guess it's really close to where I grew up. Most of my family is from the southwest of England. And then 6.3% from 4 more ethnicities. That looks like it's Norway, bits of Spain, France, Netherlands. Okay, that's actually really, really interesting. Okay, so this top part is my ethnicity estimate, which we've just reacted to. I find this so interesting. It even narrows down the regions that I'm from. Then there's the DNA matches on this page, actual relatives that is found through my shared DNA. Oh my god, 15,662 DNA matches. Okay, but this is the one that I've heard about. Ancient origins. Right, okay, so it tracks your DNA back tens of thousands of years. We're talking Vikings, ancient Romans, Neolithic farmers. It literally tells you all the different populations that you've come from. Between 6,300 and 2,800 BC, there was a 46% chance that I was a European farmer. There's also a traits section as well, 40 odd reports on all the things, like whether I'm a night owl, looks like I'm an early bird, creativity, oh, I'm happier, I'm higher on there. Maybe that's me making YouTube videos. Caffeine sensitivity is lower. I completely agree with that as well. Oh my god, I could spend ages going through this. One thing that matters to me is MyHeritage is committed in its privacy policy to never sell or license any of your genetic data. So, if you fancy doing your own, there are two options at checkout, and with my code, you're not just getting the DNA kit for £19, dollars or euros in the UK, US, Australia and Canada, you get the bundle. It's the same price, a 30-day free trial, free shipping, the lot. And honestly, there's no reason just to get the kit on its own. I have found this fascinating. Use code EARTH, scan the QR code on screen or hit the link. It's the first thing in the description and the pinned comments of this video. Right, now back to today's episode. That boy's father was a king named Philip, and Philip had spent 20 years turning the kingdom in the north, called Macedon, into the most dangerous military power Greece had ever seen. He'd done it by building a new kind of army, professional, drilled, deadly, and one by one the free cities of Greece had watched him grow until they finally understood that if they didn't stop him now, they never would. So the old rivals put their quarrels aside. Thebes and Athens, cities that had spent generations distrusting each other, joined forces for one reason: to stop Philip, and Philip marched south to meet them. But the part that matters the most for our story here is who Philip brought with him. He gave command of the entire wing of his army on that day of the biggest battle of his life to his teenage son. Alexander was 18. He'd been taught by the greatest mind in Greece, Aristotle the philosopher. He'd already stood in for his father as deputy ruler, and now his father was handing him half of the army and trusting him with it against the finest soldiers in the Greek world. For Alexander, this was a test. Everything he would later become started here, on this day, on this field. The two armies met near the town of Chaeronea in the late summer of 338 BC. Philip had a bigger force and a better one, more than 30,000 foot soldiers and thousands of horsemen, hardened by 20 years of his father's wars. Against them stood the alliance of the Greek cities, brave and fighting for their freedom, but outmatched. The fullest account of what we have of this battle comes from an ancient historian, and it tells us one thing about Alexander very clearly. When the fighting was at its hardest, it was Alexander on his wing who was the first to smash through the enemy line. The 18-year-old broke them. Whatever else is uncertain about that day, the sources agree the boy delivered. Now, you'll often see battles drawn out in a beautiful detail. Philip pretends to retreat, the Athenians chase him and break their own line, the gap opens, and Alexander's horsemen pour through straight in and strike the enemy from behind. And it's a great picture. But I have to be honest with you guys, after looking at all of this, that neat choreography comes from later retellings, not from the oldest account. So treat it as a likely reconstruction rather than something that we can watch frame by frame like it was in a movie. What we can say though is that the Greek line did break, and as it broke, the alliance began to collapse. Soldiers turned and ran, city after city, unit after unit. The line came apart and men fled for their lives. All except one unit. The sacred band did not run. While many of the army ran away, the 300 stood their ground. They had been forced into a position with no way out, and they knew what was coming, and they still stayed. Every man of them. They stood in their places next to their partners, exactly as they were trained to do. and they fought where they stood until they were cut down. When it was over, they lay together. The oldest account says their bodies were found in their ranks, still in formation, armour and men tangled together where the long spears of Philip's army had reached them. They had not broken, they had died as a unit, which is the only way that they had ever known how to fight. And then comes that moment that has echoed for 2,300 years. Plutarch tells us after the battle, the victorious King Philip came to look at the dead, and when he reached the place where the 300 lay and understood who they were, and saw that these were the paired warriors that had fallen side by side rather than abandon each other, he broke down and wept. He is said to have cursed anyone who would dare suggest there was anything shameful in these men. Perish miserably, he said, they who think that these men did or suffered anything disgraceful. The most powerful man in Greece, standing over an enemy that he had just destroyed, in tears. The people of Thebes were allowed to gather their dead, and they buried the sacred band together here in a field where they fell, in a single grave. In time, a great stone lion was raised above them. No names were carved into it, no list of the fallen, no inscriptions at all, just a lion sitting over the bones, keeping watch. We don't know exactly when the monument went up. Some scholars now think the lion we see was raised well after the battle as a later act of remembrance, but the grave beneath it belongs to that day. The lion marks a spot where the undefeated unit met its end, and then slowly the world moved on, and it forgotten. But before we lose that field to time, there's one more turn to this story, and it belongs to Alexander. 2 years after the battle, Philip was murdered, cut down by one of his own men, and just like that, the 18-year-old boy who had broken the line at Chaeronea was a teenager no more. He was king. 3 years after the sacred band was buried, something terrible happened to the city that had raised them. Thebes rose up against its new young king. Alexander answered with a speed and a fury that would come to define his entire life. He fell on the city and he destroyed it. Not just defeated it, destroyed it. The buildings were torn down. The people who had built the sacred band, who had raised those 300 warriors and mourned them under a lion, were all killed or sold into slavery. The boy who had beaten the sacred band on the battlefield had become the king who wiped their home off of the map. After that, the plain at Chaeronea fell quiet. The centuries piled up, the great stone lion toppled and broke, and the earth crept over it, until it was just a strange shape in a farmer's field, half buried and forgotten by everyone. For around 2,000 years, the sacred band lay under the ground with no one left to remember exactly where. Then, in the year 1818, a British traveller came across the broken remains of an enormous marble sculpture poking out of the soil, and it was the lion. The monument had been found again. And more than 60 years after that, an archaeologist began to dig into the ground the lion had been guarding all along, and what he found was the grave. Skeletons laid out in careful rows, side by side, not just thrown into a pit, but arranged with dignity. Their belongings were still with them after more than 2,000 years, and when the diggers counted the dead, they reached a number: 254. And here we arrive at the very first mystery that I said at the start. The ancient stories all agreed. 300 men made up the sacred band, and at Chaeronea, they died to the very last one. But this ground only held 254. So where was the other 46? And this is where I have to be honest with you guys, because it's more interesting than a tidy answer, so bear with me. We don't know exactly, and anyone who tells you that they do know is just guessing. Maybe the older writers rounded up. Maybe 300 was always just a neat figure rather than the exact count. Maybe some of the men were buried elsewhere or carried home by their families. Maybe some of the bones were lost over 23 centuries in the ground or missed in the dig. Maybe the unit simply wasn't at full strength that day. There are so many different things it could be. The gap between 300 and 254 isn't a mistake to be embarrassed about. It's the exact point where the legend and the evidence come so close you can almost see them touch, and they don't quite line up. That little space of 46 missing men is where the story stops being a legend and becomes something harder. It's more real, because these were the real bones, the wounds that made them real. And right now, in our own time, scientists are studying these skeletons again with tools the first diggers never had, learning how these men lived and how they died. The sacred band is still, even now, giving up its secrets. We can't name a single one of the 254 men found beneath the lion, and we can't prove that they were all bound together as lovers. But go back to that quiet plain in Greece and stand where we started. We know that an elite unit, undefeated for 40 years, made its last stand on this ground and refused to run. We know that the man who beat them wept when he saw who they were. And we also know that the young man would go on in just a few short years to conquer most of the known world and be remembered as Alexander the Great. And that's it from me, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video on Buried Earth. My name's Joe. I really hope you enjoyed it. Drop us a comment what kind of video you'd love to see next, or your thoughts on the Battle of Chaeronea. Just a quick reminder before you go that My Heritage DNA offer is still live. Code EARTH. Link is in the description. QR code is on the screen. Go find out what you're made of.